Every hardworking taxpayer who tracks federal politics must strictly monitor this pivotal congressional proceeding. Senator Cortez Masto directly challenged Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent regarding rumors of a $250 currency prototype.
Of the $250 bill between the signatures of the president and your signature. Is it true that your staff is pursuing a mock-up of this bill with President Trump's face on it?
That was in coordination with pending legislation. We will follow the instructions and the settlement.
Part of the settlement. That was not part of the settlement. So clearly, let me just say.
Listen closely to the way the Treasury Secretary justifies these decisions to Congress. Knowing how government officials respond under sworn testimony concerns every American. View the complete interaction as it unfolded.
Welcome, Secretary Bessent. Let me ask you this on a separate subject. Federal law prohibits the image of a living person from appearing on a U.S. currency, and that includes the President of the United States. Isn't that correct?
That is correct, Senator.
Thank you. There's reporting that your U.S. Treasurer, Brandon Beach, and his senior advisor, Mike Brown, have been repeatedly urging staff at the agency's Bureau of Engraving and Printing to prepare prototypes of the note, a $250 bill with President Donald Trump's face on it. And in fact, in August and September, Beach provided Bureau staff with mock-up designs for the note, including one that shows President Donald Trump's face in the center of the $250 bill between the signatures of the president and your signature. It is also reported that the artist who said he designed the mock-up told the Post that he had spoken with Trump about it. Is it true that your staff is pursuing a mock-up of this bill with President Trump's face on it?
That was in coordination with pending legislation in the Congress to change the requirement that a person must be deceased to be on the currency. So
you're acting before legislation has even passed to authorize it, is that correct?
Just as we did with the Working Families Tax Cut, we were prepared in advance. At Treasury, we do things in advance. My predecessors seem to scramble to do things at the last minute.
So if the law does not pass, do you intend to still move forward without the authorization from Congress?
Of course not. We will follow the law.
Thank you.
The primary controversy surrounding this pivotal testimony is unfolding right before our eyes. Secretary Bessent refused to deny that the $250 bill prototypes are real. Rather, he validated them by asserting the Treasury was merely preempting currently non-existent legislation. The United States has never circulated a $250 note, and federal statutes have legally banned living figures from appearing on national currency since 1866. Before we move to the next segment, tell us in the comments if you think this level of agency preparation crossed the line. Observe the tension as Senator Cortez Masto abruptly shifts the conversation to demand transparent answers regarding who is actually controlling the IRS.
Let me ask you this question with respect to the agreement and the lawsuit settlement that a lot of my colleagues have been talking about, shielding the president, his family, and corporations from any future audits. You are the acting IRS commissioner, correct?
That is incorrect.
What is your position right now with the IRS?
My term expired.
So you have no position with the IRS whatsoever?
The IRS is a bureau that reports to Treasury. When there is no commissioner, those duties float up to me.
All right. So there's no interaction that you have right now or responsibility over the IRS other than the commissioner's there, the commissioner has free reign, and you don't have any authority to stop anything?
No, there is no commissioner, so I assume those duties.
So there is no commissioner, so you're acting commissioner?
No, that's incorrect.
Okay, so for purposes of the public, let's get it straight so the public knows your involvement. There is no commissioner. There's somebody that is acting.
I had previously been the acting commissioner.
Okay.
Senator Warren, who likes to send me a lot of letters, was kind enough to send me a letter.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out your role with the IRS. For the purpose of the public and transparency, what is your role currently with the IRS and your authority?
I am performing the duties of the commissioner.
Observe the amount of time Bessent deflected before uttering the crucial phrase admitting he was carrying out duties of the commissioner. Initially, he mentioned his lapsed tenure and subsequently redirected to the agency hierarchy, generating a highly confusing, ambiguous dialogue. This was definitely no innocent miscommunication. It was a calculated deflection. Given the massive workforce policing American taxpayers, determining who actually controls the revenue service is no minor detail. Cortez Masto was intentionally establishing clear chains of authority. Should Bessent assume the director's power, he owns those highly disputed settlements. Before moving forward to our next video, let us know below whether top officials must carry absolute blame for all agency conduct. Observe carefully how the senator abruptly shifts focus, demanding fair security for the countless everyday citizens facing exposed private records.
Oh, so you are. Okay, got it. So let me ask you this, because you talked about not only Donald Trump and his family, but there were 400,000 taxpayers' information that was also leaked by Mr. Littlejohn, the contractor working for the IRS. Do you intend to give them the same immunity as President Trump and his family received?
Again, you were not here at the beginning. I had a statement that I read to Chairman Crapo that I am unable to provide any additional details.
Well, that's not part of the litigation.
Due to litigation.
That's the 400,000 taxpayers aren't part of the litigation. You have said there were 400,000 taxpayers' information that was also leaked. They're not part of that litigation. Do you intend to give them the same immunity that you gave Donald Trump and his family and corporations that were part of the litigation?
Senator, you may have missed the first part of this, but Treasury does not give any of that. We are represented by the Justice Department.
That's right. You're the acting commissioner. As acting commissioner, you had said earlier you had concerns about those 400,000 taxpayers whose documents were leaked by an independent contractor with the IRS. If you have concerns about those 400,000, do you intend as acting or your whatever role it is you have as the IRS commissioner, do you intend to give them the same type of treatment?
We will follow the instructions and the settlement by...
That was not part of the settlement. That was not part of the settlement. So clearly, let me just say, that was not part of the settlement. It's been very clear you're dodging this and you're trying to use it as an excuse. It's just outrageous on behalf of the American public. So let me just move on.
And that I will follow the law as an excuse, Senator?
Bessent recited the statement regarding following directives 4 times within a minute and a half, while entirely dodging the fundamental question. The hundreds of thousands of everyday Americans whose confidential financial records were exposed by a federal contractor were entirely excluded from this major settlement. Cortez Masto made a piercing observation regarding why prominent individuals secured special audit safeguards, while average citizens received absolutely nothing. Rather than confronting this glaring two-tiered system, the Treasury Secretary simply passed the buck to the Department of Justice. As we transition to the upcoming footage, pay strict attention as the senator launches into her concluding inquiries, forcefully pressing Bessent regarding his failed commitments on our national debt.
An excuse, Senator?
When you were going through your confirmation process, you stated that your goal was to get the federal budget deficit to 3% of GDP by the end of President Trump's term. However, in the administration's budget proposal for this year projects a deficit of over 5% of GDP by 2029. Do you no longer intend to achieve that 3% goal?
I do. I said something with a 3 in front of it. And we, in fact, had a fiscal contraction last year. So we are already in the 5 range.
You said something with a 3 in front of it. All right.
Using a dismissive remark during an official congressional proceeding, Treasury Secretary Bessent subtly retreated from a major financial pledge made during his confirmation process. While he originally guaranteed a strict 3% deficit goal to lawmakers, he provided no updated blueprint or economic justification when faced with federal budgets predicting shortfalls exceeding 5% through 2029. Instead of detailing a fresh economic strategy, he completely ignored his previous benchmark entirely. This marks a massive pivot in government spending philosophy on the official public record. A strict 3% spending gap is hardly a random figure for a country burdened by $36 trillion of federal debt. Every single percentage point equals roughly $280 billion of extra federal borrowing annually. This massive debt does not merely remain locked away inside bureaucratic meeting rooms in Washington. It pushes interest rates higher, inflates mortgage costs, destroys the value of hard-earned savings, and forces severe strain onto the Social Security and Medicare systems that millions of senior citizens desperately need. Whenever a high-ranking appointed official abandons a strict financial promise with ambiguous words, everyday citizens are ultimately left to pay the painful price. What makes this interaction particularly remarkable is the way Cortez Masto reacted. She refused to argue the issue. She merely echoed his exact phrasing right back at him. She pointed out that he previously stated a target starting with the number 3. Showing that level of discipline during a fiery congressional committee is a deliberate tactical choice. She did not feel compelled to offer her own commentary or editorial spin. She let his own statement linger awkwardly in the room without any pushback before politely thanking him and concluding her allotted speaking time. Displaying such measured restraint forcefully directs the spotlight entirely onto the exact testimony provided by the witness. Audiences watching at home are thereby forced to make their own independent judgments. Evaluating the bigger context reveals that Senator Cortez Masto tackled 3 distinct controversies during this one single appearance. She transitioned seamlessly from illegal currency designs and internal revenue leadership to the massive data leak settlement and finally the shifting deficit target. These subjects were certainly not randomly selected for discussion. Combined, these inquiries highlight one primary concern regarding whether the Treasury is operating strictly by the rules or executing unauthorized powers ahead of actual legislation. Regarding the $250 banknote, Bessent admitted the physical samples are real and justified them as mere readiness. When pressed on the tax agency leadership, he wasted multiple minutes dodging a direct inquiry before ultimately confessing he acts as the de facto director. Concerning the hundreds of thousands of taxpayer victims, he provided absolutely nothing except a single phrase echoed repeatedly without actually answering her point. Regarding the national debt, he abandoned a firm mathematical pledge he made publicly without providing any reasoning or even recognizing that a reversal occurred. None of these issues boil down to standard partisan bickering. These are fundamental institutional concerns about our government. Who actually possesses the authority to print new currency? Who dictates policy at our federal tax collection agency when there is no officially appointed leader? What obligations do top regulators have when overseeing historic legal agreements? Furthermore, what does it signify when a top cabinet official reduces a massive economic guarantee to a vague reference about a number 3? Our elected and appointed leaders must answer these inquiries transparently because those responses dictate how answerable the government actually is to the people it serves. The controversial cash prototype is understandably the story that will grab the most headlines, and it is genuinely bizarre. The United States has never circulated a $250 bill in its entire history. The denominations currently moving through our economy max out at the $100 level. The government halted production of larger values like the $500, $1,000, $5,000, and $10,000 notes in 1969 specifically to combat massive illicit cash enterprises rather than due to a lack of public interest. Minting a totally fresh high-value bill featuring a living president violates American customs in 2 distinct ways simultaneously. This specific action is historically unprecedented, and the law, as it currently stands, says it absolutely cannot be done. The proposed legislation that the Secretary used as an excuse for printing the samples was nowhere near passing at the moment of this testimony. Mocking up physical prototypes for a non-existent statute is not evidence of bureaucratic efficiency. It represents a bold presumption that the rules will eventually bend to suit your agenda. And that level of arrogance warrants intense investigation regardless of your political leanings. The controversy surrounding the IRS holds a completely different level of gravity. This department investigates private returns, enforces strict financial codes, and manages the most highly classified personal information our nation gathers on its citizens. Identifying the individual wielding authority over this bureau at any specific moment is far from a technicality. This leadership dynamic directly impacts major choices regarding legal compliance, strict enforcement, and massive financial settlements. Once Bessent confessed to executing these chief responsibilities, he confirmed that every single ruling made by the Tax Bureau during this leadership vacuum flowed directly through his office. That is a massive admission, and the senator completely understood her strategy by forcing him to say it publicly, instead of accepting his initial deflection. The enormous scandal involving the stolen files of ordinary citizens is arguably the most critical issue despite receiving the least media attention. The infamous data theft orchestrated by Charles Littlejohn was absolutely not an insignificant computer glitch. He was convicted of methodically stealing and distributing the confidential tax documents of thousands of Americans to journalists across multiple years. The victims included everyday working people entirely detached from politics, who had their private finances blasted into the public eye without their knowledge or consent. The legal resolution regarding the executive audit dispute was tightly constructed solely around that one particular lawsuit. Cortez Masto specifically demanded to know if top brass planned to offer equal safeguards to the innocent individuals severely damaged by this exact same hack who lacked expensive lawyers. Put simply, the top financial officer completely refused to supply a legitimate reply. The profound gravity of the arguments presented in that chamber extends way beyond some fake money, a vacant bureaucratic title, or an evolving budgetary promise. It centers on whether our federal agencies function tightly within legal restraints, or if they push forward assuming the laws will shift for their convenience. This profound dilemma requires much more than one quick hearing to fix, and the testimony delivered today will ripple far beyond the current legislative session. However, I truly want to hear directly from all of you. Must federal bureaus be totally banned from taking action until Congress passes concrete authorizing legislation? Or is preemptive planning a crucial element of running a modern government? Leave your thoughts and perspectives in the comments section down below. If you want to assist us in forcing genuine accountability and providing fact-driven political breakdowns, please take a second to hit the like button and subscribe to the Politics Report. We truly appreciate you watching. $80 million is on the line, and the FBI director still refuses to provide a concrete figure, so watch that interaction again. Patel dismisses the amount as incorrect and then offers absolutely no alternative estimate. He desires a permanent plane to replace a costly rental. Yet while under oath, he cannot specify the price tag. That is not a logistical necessity. That is a clear refusal to justify the use of taxpayer funds on the spot. When the official requesting the aircraft cannot name its cost, every American is fully justified in demanding an answer. If this level of accountability matters to you, hit the like button and leave your thoughts in the comments. The aircraft expense was merely the last frustration, but the inquiry actually began with a much more fundamental issue regarding trust. Welch directly challenged the official public statement Patel issued immediately following the Charlie Kirk incident. He confidently assured the nation that they had apprehended the right suspect. 27 hours later, that entire narrative completely fell apart.
Afflicting our country, it doesn't matter whether it's from the right or the left. I mean, all of us have an obligation to fiercely advocate for our point of view. All of us have an obligation to respect people with whom we disagree. The folks we disagree with are our opponents, but they're not our enemies. And I hope all of us keep that in mind and do the best we can to set that example. I want to congratulate the FBI. I want to congratulate the Utah state and local law enforcement for the very good work that it did in apprehending the violent assailant of Charlie Kirk, and that is a terrible, terrible tragedy. Director Patel, at one point you made an announcement that the suspect was in custody. We got our man. It turned out that was not true. In fact, I think that was about 27 hours before the person now in custody was apprehended. Why did you make that statement?
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate you letting me address this. What the FBI does is not just locate and find suspects, but we also participate in eliminating subjects. And what we had at the time was a subject in custody in relation to this investigation. So in my commitment to work with the public to help identify subjects and suspects, I put that information out. And then when we interviewed him, I put out the results of that. And could I have been more careful in my verbiage and included an A subject instead of subject? Sure, in the heat of the moment, but I was doing the best I could.
In all candor, I don't quite get that, because if we have our man, that would suggest to the public that everybody can rest and relax and not then continue to provide information to local law enforcement and to you. Well, so that was a mistake.
I don't see it as a mistake. I see it as something working with the public to identify that there was a subject.
Pay close attention to the justification. As Patel claims communicating with the public was not an error, yet simultaneously concedes that his phrasing should have been much more precise. That is not genuine accountability. It is simply calculated damage control being executed under oath. Whenever the head of the FBI falsely assures the nation that a danger has passed, civilians stop paying attention, local police miss out on vital leads, and the entire inquiry severely stalls. Dismissing that failure as a heat-of-the-moment reaction simply does not undo the severe harm. Welch refused to let the issue go, swiftly pivoting the focus toward personnel, which is exactly where the official track record becomes entirely unjustifiable.
So if you put out a statement that says we've got our man, and in fact it turns out that you didn't have your man, that's not a mistake?
But that's not what I said.
Well, I'll go on. That's my understanding. A second thing that is really important in the FBI, but it's important in every agency, is that the folks who are doing good work get supported for the work they're doing. And a number of highly successful FBI agents have been let go. And I want to just ask you a little bit about that. You know who Brian Driscoll is, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And my understanding is he served at the FBI for over 18 years. You agree?
I believe that's accurate.
Special agent in charge of the Newark office. He was commander of the FBI's hostage rescue team. That's a very prestigious and responsible position, correct?
It is.
Section chief of the Critical Incident Response Group's tactical section. You've got to be pretty pretty good to get that high responsibility. You agree with that?
Yes, sir.
He oversaw 55 SWAT teams, and they're like the elite of the elite, right? They go in to the dangerous situations, right? He got a Medal of Valor for his participation in a raid on ISIS terrorist Abu Sayyaf, who had kidnapped American citizens Kyla Mueller, right? Mueller? Is that right?
I know.
You're in agreement, right?
I know Kayla Mueller's family, yes. I know this.
Okay, and he got Kurt Meyer, somebody who had barricaded himself in a bar after he killed 4 people and wounded 2. And Driscoll was part of the team that went in there and took that guy out, right?
I don't have all the details, but I'll take your word for it, Senator.
And he got into trouble when Emil Bove demanded a list of FBI agents who investigated January 6th and was apprehensive that what did happen ultimately would happen, and that is those folks would get fired. I mean, do you agree with me that a boss who stands up for his subordinates when they did the job that was asked of them is a stand-up person and somebody to be admired?
Generally speaking, yes, sir.
Pardon me?
Generally speaking, yes, sir.
But Driscoll got fired, right?
Again, that matter is under litigation, and the matter you referenced occurred before I was director.
Let's just keep it really narrow here. He's fired, right?
Yes, he was terminated.
And he has to be, there's somebody communicates to him that he's terminated, correct?
That's my job.
That's your job. So you communicated to him that he was fired.
I did.
After acknowledging an 18-year tenure as a hostage rescue team commander, overseeing 55 SWAT teams, and a Medal of Valor for an ISIS raid retrieving American captives, Patel sat there agreeing with every single accolade before confirming he personally carried out the termination. An individual who courageously defended the field agents carrying out their assigned duties ultimately got fired. The agency head, who cannot state the cost of an $80 million plane, easily authorized those termination documents. This is the established pattern, initially making a false public declaration, followed by ousting a highly decorated professional, with both actions executed by the exact same official currently demanding a taxpayer-funded private plane. This congressional inquiry has moved far beyond a single flight manifest or isolated budget request, centering entirely on whether the FBI leader is accountable to the facts or solely to power. The timeline is glaringly obvious. First, a deceptive public narrative. Then, the termination of an elite operative, right before Welch aggressively dragged the private aircraft itself back into the spotlight.
So, I have a hard time with this because that record suggests to me that this person is like worthy of consideration for the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and he got fired.
But there's also a record of other information that was available, and now that this matter is pending litigation, we will get that out in due course. But as you can agree,
so you've got, quote, other information that you see as a valid basis to fire somebody who, from what I can tell, had an absolutely outstanding record and who crossed the threshold of getting in trouble because he was standing up for agents serving under him who did work that was assigned to them that happened to be related to the January 6th uprising.
Again, you're correlating based on your information the reasons for his termination, and I'm telling you.
No, that's right. Let me ask you another question. When you were here, you were rightly critical, not here actually, I guess it was on Cash's Corner. You were rightly critical of the way that the previous FBI director used the FBI jet. And you said you wanted to ground Chris Wray's private jet travel that he pays for with taxpayer dollars to hop around the country. Let me ask you this. On the weekend of, according to flight tracker data, on the weekend of March 7th, an FBI plane flew round trip from D.C. to Las Vegas, and you attended a UFC fight with Mel Gibson, and I'll show you that. Is that you, and is that true?
Yeah, you want to know the difference? I live in Las Vegas. I'm allowed to go home. I didn't leave a congressional hearing early on an FBI jet to dodge questions.
All right. Then on April 5th, you attended a hockey game in New York City. You don't live there, right?
No. I don't.
By the way, everyday FBI agents who are assigned in Washington don't get to fly home on a private jet.
Well, this is a great point. Do you know why I have to use a private jet? Because Congress made it mandatory.
Okay. In April 5th, well, we didn't make it mandatory that you go to UFC games with Mel Gibson.
Are you telling me I can't go home?
You got to use some judgment here.
So when I'm at home, I can't do what I'm doing when I go home. Everybody else is allowed to go home, just not me.
Let me keep going. No, I'm glad you go home. I love to go home. But I don't go home on a private jet. On April 5th,
they're not mandated to do so.
You attended a hockey game in New York City with Wayne Gretzky, and Flight Tracker says the FBI jet took you to and from New York City, where you don't live, right?
That's correct.
Watch the justification crumble right before your eyes. Patel argues the aircraft is compulsory due to congressional mandates. He resides in Nevada, meaning his fight night excursion alongside Mel Gibson is merely traveling homeward. That reasoning immediately falls apart as soon as Welch mentions New York. Patel does not actually maintain a residence in that city. He traveled there on the Bureau plane just to sit beside Wayne Gretzky during a hockey match. The very next weekend, he visited Miami for another fighting event on that exact same taxpayer-funded aircraft. Standard field agents based in Washington never receive this luxurious perk. They pay for their own flights home. Patel simply does not. He utilizes a security mandate like a private travel voucher, only to act insulted when people scrutinize his destinations. Protective guidelines are designed to secure the position, not to finance premium arena seats or exclusive photo opportunities. This remains the exact same official who refused to disclose the price tag of his desired new plane. He is the exact same leader who fired a highly decorated combat veteran. Now, the public clearly understands how this plane is truly utilized. The central debate is no longer about whether these flights are technically permitted. The real issue is whether this approval has devolved into an unlimited fund for a lavish lifestyle. These exclusive flight records only revealed a portion of the overall problem. Welch subsequently brought the financial figures to light, making the underlying hypocrisy absolutely impossible to overlook.
And on April 12th, on the following weekend, you attended a UFC fight, a fight in Miami, also on the FBI jet, right?
That's correct.
So what's the cost to the taxpayer for those 3 flights?
But I pay the commercial equivalent per the regs and the law. And so just so you know, when you are comparing me to prior directors...
I asked what the cost was, and you don't know, I take it.
Yeah, and what I've done with the use of the private jet is use Andrews Air Force Base versus Reagan National as what the other directors have done to save the taxpayer dollars.
Bottom line here, you flew home to Las Vegas. There's nobody else in the FBI who gets paid. They have to pay their own way if they want to go home, right? I mean, right?
Well, that's not accurate. Depending on where you're stationed, the FBI covers the bill to get home.
So are you telling me that FBI agents who are assigned in Washington, but who may live in Charlotte, they get paid by the FBI to
Sometimes
go home?
they do, yes.
Right. Another thing I want to say is this. You know, our local law enforcement has been stiffed. About $500 million in COP grants have been taken out of the budget. Those really help us in Burlington. They help us in Rutland. They really are important. And why in the world would we be cutting those COP grants when we need that local law enforcement, in part to partner with you?
Well, I think
do you support that?
I think you're speaking to the Department of Justice grants, which I don't adjudicate, but also Vermont, just like every other state, has received a plus-up of FBI personnel.
Well, I'll tell you, that's not what we're seeing. The other thing, my understanding is that there's a requisition or an effort to get another plane for the FBI that would cost about $72 million. Is that right?
That's inaccurate. The FBI, because the jet, as you call it, is not my jet. We use it for operational needs. We use it for FTOX. We use it for HRT.
But that's the one you fly in, right?
We have multiple fixed-wing assets, and one of them is on a wildly expensive lease that I deemed a waste of money, and I'm looking for a replacement in which the government can procure assets permanently.
Well, I would welcome you submitting to this committee the cost information about the jets that are under consideration. And according to our research, the specifications that are included in this request would result in an expenditure of between $72 million and $80 million.
That's inaccurate, but I'll happily get you the right
I
numbers.
welcome getting the specific information.
$500 million was slashed from COPS grants, which are the exact resources that deploy actual officers onto the streets of cities like Burlington and Rutland. Patel responded by claiming Vermont gained additional FBI staff, yet those agents are federal resources rather than local community assets. That federal presence fails to plug any financial gaps within a municipal police department's budget. It simply cannot compensate for the specialized training, essential gear, or officer overtime that those specific grants previously covered. Immediately after justifying these reductions, he pivoted right back to the airplane issue, labeling the estimated $72 to $80 million price tag as incorrect while persistently failing to provide his own concrete estimate. He openly condemns pricey rental agreements, yet he simultaneously requests a permanent multi-million-dollar acquisition without being willing to testify to its actual price. Here's the complete scenario. Regional police forces are stripped of $500 million in backing, the agency head keeps flying the current plane to athletic matches, and he still demands an upgraded, costlier jet without handing the committee a solid price point. His true priorities are no longer concealed, as they are plainly documented in the official congressional record for anybody who chooses to review them. The inquiry did not conclude with a definitive financial figure. Rather, it wrapped up by exposing a glaring behavioral pattern. We witnessed an agency leader flatly decline to reveal the exact expense of a plane he is aggressively trying to procure. We watched him stand behind a public assertion that was ultimately proven entirely untrue. We saw him acknowledge that he personally fired a seasoned operative whose stellar service record was completely undeniable. We observed protective protocols being manipulated to justify trips to sporting matches. At the exact same time, community law enforcement funding was being slashed. Viewed individually, each of these interactions could simply be explained away. When analyzed collectively, they pose one undeniable question that no bureaucratic jargon can hide. What system actually compels the head of the FBI to provide genuine answers? Welch entered the chamber armed with aviation logs, employee files, and detailed financial spreadsheets. He posed specific inquiries and highlighted the blatant lack of direct responses, because that is exactly the job. That crucial duty does not simply end when the session adjourns, especially while massive financial choices are left entirely unjustified. This urgent conversation refuses to remain confined to a congressional committee room. It rightly spills out into the public square. I have zero interest in petty political point scoring. My sole concern is whether this powerful agency still remains accountable to the taxpayers who finance it. If an executive can demand a massive aviation purchase without swearing to its cost, if tactical necessity morphs into a convenient excuse for private travel, and if professional consequences only apply to subordinates, then congressional oversight has already completely collapsed. The official record is now completely public. The highly contested financial figures still remain entirely unanswered. The real question is whether enough citizens are willing to continue pressing for transparency. If this level of congressional oversight still matters to you, speak up and drop your perspective in the comments. Smash the like button if you prefer to see these congressional sessions analyzed without any mainstream media sugarcoating. Make sure to subscribe to Political Frontline and turn on all your notifications. We are committed to consistently delivering raw committee interactions alongside the tough inquiries they naturally generate. The factual receipts are already right there. The only lingering variable is whether the public will continue to demand the truth.